Hey guys, so welcome back to another video. Now, before we get into this, just a heads up on spoilers. I will be spoiling some parts of the movie. However, I will not be doing this until sometime later into this video, and I will be making it absolutely clear once I do talk about spoilers. So if you really want to go in blind, you can watch a big chunk of this video and you'll be fine. However, I will be warning you when I start talking about spoiler stuff. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's get into it. So the other week, out of nowhere, I received an email from Paramount Pictures saying, hey, would you like to come down, Sonic content creator, and watch the new Sonic movie at the London premiere? My god, it's a Christmas miracle! Yes, I would love to come down and watch the Sonic movie premiere. They invited me down to a premiere party, and I said, I will go as long as I can actually film the behind the scenes stuff, because I think that would be really cool. And they said, yeah, that's fine, feel free to do that. So I'll be uploading a video later of lots of behind the scenes stuff about what actually went on, and I think you'll really enjoy that. There was a lot of really cool stuff. But anyway, on with the video reviews. So I suppose the biggest question that everybody has is the third Sonic movie any good? Well, I actually really liked it. I thought it was a pretty fun and decent movie. In fact, I left feeling quite awesome about it. Now, obviously since then I had some time to think about what it was I saw, and yeah, there are some things which I think are a little bit bad about the film, but overall, I thought it was a really good film. I had a lot of fun watching it, and I would actually recommend it to you if you're wanting to watch a fun movie this Christmas. Yeah, the Sonic movie is a pretty decent film to watch. That said, there are some criticisms I do have of it, and I have a feeling as well that actual professional movie critics might echo some of this stuff too. The first big problem that I do have is actually, like, it's the first 15-20 minutes. It's not good. The first 15-20 minutes of the movie is quite bad. Now, this is the point where they introduce Shadow. Don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything. And they kind of do it in like this really tense way. It's like this really creepy sense of foreboding that something's going to happen. But the problem is, they don't let the scene, I want to say, is breathe the right word? So yeah, they don't really let the scene breathe or just play out. It's like all of a sudden there'll be two characters talking, and before you can kind of get a sense of what you're looking at or what you're watching, suddenly it cuts to something else, and then there might be the same two characters talking, but it then cuts again, and it cuts again, and it cuts again, and it cuts again, and it cuts again. This is kind of okay for making the movie feel fast-paced, but as a consequence, when you're just trying to get into the film, it's really difficult to, like, all of a sudden, let's give you an example. After the initial opening shock, it cuts to Sonic, Tails and Knuckles having fun, and Tom and Maddie are there as well. You kind of want to see where these characters have come from since the last time we saw them, but it doesn't really give you any time to do that. Like, you're trying to focus in on it, and you're trying to see how their relationships have developed and how they've changed since the previous movie, but it just gives you no time to do it. Like, it kind of feels like it's going to do that, and all of a sudden it cuts to somewhere else. You're like, oh, now we're in Tokyo, and now we're over here, now we're in the Chow Garden restaurant, now we're doing this, now we're doing that, and it never really gives the scenes time to get you engaged and draw you into the action or into the, you know, the deeper level stuff as it is. It's just really desperate to get the plot going underway. I think some people might like that, and I know that was kind of a criticism of the second film, but for me, I felt that a lot of these scenes could have been slowed down just a bit and given us time to actually really get a sense of what's going on. You know, let the camera, let the actors tell the story, not just like these quick editing, like, okay, we gotta get on now, we gotta tell this story, we gotta tell this story, we gotta have an action scene now, you know. It really felt like there was too much going on, and I know some people are gonna be like, oh, it's a Sonic movie, you're complaining about action. No, I'm kind of complaining about how it felt like there was a storytelling opportunity here that didn't really meet its full potential. However, about 20 minutes later, and again, I'm not going to be talking major spoilers here, we have the flashback sequence with Maria and Shadow. And guys, no hyperbole when I say this, this is one of the best scenes and the best adaptations of Shadow and Maria's friendship I have ever seen. In fact, it might be one of the best depictions of a friendship or any kind of relationship in any Sonic media since that scene between Knuckles and Rouge in Sonic Adventure 2, you know, where they don't really say anything, but it's the body language and the dialogue that's doing everything. it was so well done. Like, it's like the polar opposite of everything I've just talked about. They take time to develop the relationship. You can see at first how Maria is kind of nervous about who Shadow is, and Shadow's kind of this being who's like, you can tell that he's powerful, he's scary, he's dangerous, but there's basically this child coming up to him, and they're trying to figure each other out, and it's not done through any dialogue. It's done through the facial expression. It's done through how they act around each other, and it is done so well. And you then have this wonderful little montage sequence of them just playing with each other. It's just like two friends as if they were growing up, and it's so wonderful to watch. And I can't remember the actress's name, but whoever it is that plays Maria, she's really only in the film for about 5 minutes, but it's one of the standout performances. She is so good in this. She's really good. It is so well done. And everyone that was responsible for these sequences, they deserve some huge credit. It was so well done, this sequence. I really can't praise it enough. And it didn't overstay its welcome either. It was so well done, and it was so lovely to watch and see. This was actually a really, really great storytelling thing as well, because it kind of makes you understand and sympathize with Shadow way more than the video games do. You really understand his rage and his anger at Gunn and what basically humanity represents for what happened to his friend. And it was just done so well, that whole juxtaposition of this amazing life that Shadow had, even though he was kind of a prisoner in a way. He had this wonderful friendship, and it was just taken away from him, and you understand his rage, you understand his anger, and you kind of sympathize with him, and you're kind of rooting for him at some point. It was just so well done, this sequence, and it really gave you this emotional connection and hook, which honestly, I don't think any of the previous movies have done that well. So I haven't actually memorized a script this time. I'm just kind of talking verbatim. I do have a few notes here and bullet points that I've written down, but yeah, if I seem a bit rambly, this is why. I'm kind of doing everything off the top of my head here. So there's this theme that's running through the movie, a sense of what is a family and what is a relationship, and how it can, I'm not really sure how to word this. It's kind of like all the stages of being in a family and, you know, being in a friendship and a relationship. And obviously this is a kid's film, so it's not that deep, and, you know, it's not going to do anything like, oh, this movie, it's going to analyze the human condition. You know, it's not anything like that. But there is something here which I think is quite good, at least as an entry-level idea and discussion for children. Like, the movie opens basically with kind of a again, we're keeping spoilers to a minimum. I'm not going to be talking too much at the minute. It opens with like it's not Sonic's birthday, but it is like the anniversary of when he first came to Earth, and there's kind of this recollection of how Sonic was alone for a long time, and then he meets Tom and Maddie, and he basically has friends and a family, and how their love for him and their advice has guided him to be the hero that he is today. And in a way, you've got Tails and Knuckles as well, who their friendship with Sonic have also kind of formed this unique team together. And then you kind of see what's going on with Shadow, how he had a family and it was taken away from him, and how it's just filled him with this rage, and he's got no guidance as to how to channel that. And it kind of shows you how people can be if they've got all these emotional and all these difficult issues about a loss or something, and how it can manifest itself in destructive means if they don't have a positive role model to guide them through it. And the movie actually does this. Gerald Robotnik he's alive in this movie. Yeah, I'm gonna get into this a bit later on, but Gerald Robotnik is a really interesting character in this film. He's really manipulative over Shadow, and he's an incredibly negative influence. And I kind of like this because I feel a little bit vindicated with this, because in my Sonic Adventure 2 analysis video, I actually made a point here, and a lot of people disagree with me, that Gerald Robotnik has been quite retconned in recent years by Sega to be this good guy scientist, but when you actually look at the video game itself, he's quite a nasty person. There's a lot of stuff that suggests, no, actually, he was always this psychopathic. He wasn't a nice guy, and the movie really leans into that. There's an idea that he wasn't just this good guy scientist. He did have some evil intentions, and when you see how he acts and how he's manipulating and controlling Shadow, it's really interesting, and it's a really cool juxtaposition of Sonic, who had this family that supported him and guided him when he lost, obviously he loses his mum in the first movie. Shadow hasn't had any of that. There's another angle too. Dr. Robotnik, Dr. Eggman, I'm gonna interchange those names a lot during this, but he doesn't really have anyone in his life except for Agent Stone, and Agent Stone is his friend, let's say, and Agent Stone really cares for the Doctor. He really supports him and really likes him, and you know, they're friends. And yeah, they really lean into that idea. There's a lot of nod, wink, wink. Is there something going on here? But no, Agent Stone is Dr. Eggman's friend. Agent Stone is kind of Robotnik's friend and what little family Robotnik has. But then he learns that Gerald, his grandfather, is alive, and he decides, no, I kind of want to have a relationship with my grandfather. I want to make up for lost time, shall we say. And there is actually this, it's a really funny sequence. They wear these VR headsets, and they kind of have this flashback to a life that they could have had. And it's really, really funny. Like, you've probably seen some clips of this in the trailer, like where Gerald is dressed as Santa Claus and Robotnik comes in and sort of tackles him. Yeah, it's little things like that, and they basically have like an entire family history in the space of 3 minutes, and it's really, really funny. As a consequence of this relationship as well, Robotnik kind of pushes Agent Stone away and kind of doesn't want anything more to do with him, and Agent Stone doesn't know how to deal with this or take this, and there's this wonderful little moment of, well, oh, I feel really sorry for Agent Stone. And again, another standout performance here, Lee Majub, again, really amazing performance as Agent Stone. He's really funny in this, and I've got to say this as well. One of the reasons why I think Agent Stone has resonated with fans the way he has is in the first movie, he was kind of this employee of Robotnik's who, you know, never quite who was trying to do everything to please his boss, but his boss just didn't care, just was abusive to him and disrespected him and just was like treating him really badly. Like, everybody has had a boss like that, so everybody identified with it. But the other reason as well is Lee is very clever with his performance, and you kind of see this in a lot of Jim Carrey movies. Like, if you watch any movie where Jim Carrey is acting alongside someone, a lot of performers kind of make a mistake when performing with him, because Jim Carrey is a very, very funny man. And a lot of performers, when it's like, oh my god, I'm acting with Jim Carrey, I've got to be just as funny as he is, maybe even funnier, then I'll look funny as well. And an example of this, I think, would be Tommy Lee Jones in Batman Forever. He's supposed to be playing Two-Face, and at the start of the film, he's genuinely kind of terrifying, like when he's interrogating the police officer. But the moment he starts acting with Jim Carrey, he really turns the comedy on and basically becomes the Joker. And it's like, no, what are you doing? You're not as funny as Jim Carrey. Be the opposite. Be this terrifying gangster-like character. That would be way better. Whereas in Dumb and Dumber, his co-star kind of just lets Jim be Jim, and he kind of just reacts to what's going on, and it's really funny. And Lee Majub takes that approach. He doesn't try to one-up Eggman. He kind of just reacts to him, like he'll sort of look out the corner of his eye of this, I don't really know what you're doing, but okay, I'll go along with it, Doctor. You know, and it makes it way funnier. Agent Stone is a really funny character, and it just makes his scenes so much better, and you really identify and sort of root for him more because of it. So Lee Majub, really awesome performance in this one. Where was I? Oh yeah, the theme of families. Basically there's an incident where with Tom kind of gets really badly hurt, and for a brief while you're not sure if he's going to pull through. It's kind of comes full circle, like Shadow loses Maria and Sonic's going to possibly lose Tom, who's essentially his father figure in this. And this kind of tips Sonic over the edge, and he starts to get this rage and anger that Shadow has, and it frightens his friends. They're like, Sonic, you've got to calm down. You're gonna make the stakes are too big. You've got to calm down. Sonic gets mad. He gets proper mad with everybody, and he kind of doesn't hold back. And it sort of eventually explodes into this really awesome moment between him and Shadow, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Oh yeah, I suppose I could talk about performances in general. Jim Carrey, as we know, is playing Robotnik and he's playing Gerald, and he does, again, it's a really good job. He's obviously, his Robotnik is legitimately really, really funny, but his Gerald is terrifying. Like, at first, it's a little bit goofy, and, you know, it's kind of like this reserved goofiness. You know, you're not quite sure where he's going with it, but really quickly, you can just see it. It's not, like, outrightly done, but you can see there's this, like, this manipulation going on, and Gerald manipulates everybody, and you can kind of see it. So, with Robotnik, he's like, Grandpappy, Grandpappy, and you can see Gerald goes, I can use this. He goes along with being Eggman's like a new surrogate father, shall we say, this father figure in his life, and you can clearly tell right from the word go that Gerald is manipulating him, and even Shadow as well. You can see how Gerald starts to manipulate Shadow. There's a really great moment. They start talking about the plan, and obviously the plan is essentially Sonic Adventure 2. They're going to use the Eclipse Cannon to essentially blackmail the world in surrendering to them, and if they don't, they're going to fire the Eclipse Cannon and destroy Gun Headquarters, and also half of London along with it. So that's kind of the plan, you know, it's the plan from Sonic Adventure 2. And there's a point where Shadow is kind of looking at what's going on here, and he actually says to the Professor, is this really what Maria would want? As if he's kind of thinking, hang on, something doesn't seem right about all this. And Gerald kind of turns to him and say, don't think about that. Think about what they did to you. Think about your emotions. Think about your rage. And I really liked that, because in the game, and again, it was something that I mentioned in my Adventure 2 analysis video, that a lot of people kind of are like, no, I don't really know about that. There's a lot of evidence that Gerald was the one that brainwashed Shadow. The scene at the end of the game where Gerald admits that he essentially reprogrammed Shadow's mind. So when you play as Shadow, you're actually playing as Gerald. The rage that Shadow feels is Gerald Robotnik's rage in his quest for vengeance, and it's only when Amy talks to him at the end that he kind of breaks out of it and gets free will. And there's this kind of sense that Gerald has been manipulating Shadow all this time, and there's no positive role model for Shadow, which is why he's going along with Gerald's plan and essentially trying to doom mankind. Okay, so I should probably talk about some of the other performances as well. Now, this might be kind of controversial, but I really don't like Sonic in this. I know, it's kind of weird, like, oh, let's talk about the Sonic movie. Oh, I really enjoyed the Sonic movie. Sonic kind of sucks. Yeah, so, let me be very clear and clarify this. Ben Schwartz, fantastic. Really, really good performance. He doesn't falter once during it, and when he goes through this emotions of Sonic being this happy, positive influence, like, yeah, come on guys, we're gonna do it, to the whole, what did you do to Tom? You know, you can feel his rage and his anger, and it's great. The problem, though, is it's kind of the writing and what he's been given to work with. There's a lot of moments where Sonic is, they're trying to just force him to be funny, and it just ain't good. It's really annoying. Like, I'm not going to say what it is, but at the start of the movie, they say the line from City Escape, and it's kind of modified a little bit, but it's awful. It's so cringeworthy. It's so forced, and you can tell that, and it doesn't even make any sense in the context of what's going on. It's just really forced and really terrible, and constantly Sonic is making jokes and he's making references, and you can tell why they're doing it. It's a kids movie, it'll be funny, it'll be fun, let's make references that kids will be like, oh, I know that, yay, that's fun, yeah, haha, Sonic. And there's like a small section where they're running through London and Sonic's doing all this stuff, and it just goes on, and it's really not good. It's kind of annoying. Like, Like, how can I put this? To turn it on its head, in Sonic 2, in the movie Sonic 2, I think some of the best scenes in that is with Tom and Sonic, when they're on the boat just talking to one another. It's a really, really great scene, and a lot of movie critics also said they really enjoyed that, and I think a lot of fans also really like that scene. And again, when Sonic and Tom are in the car in the first movie, that's really, really funny because they're just kind of talking to one another, and Sonic's kind of trying to understand what the world is like, and Tom's sort of roughly explaining it to him. And Sonic's not really cracking any jokes, any references, and it's really good. And there's sequences like that in the film, when Sonic is just talking to people, and when it's not forced. Oh, we got a sequence here where Sonic's got to do some goofy, fun stuff. It ain't good. It's not good. You can tell it's forced. It's really not funny. It's really awkward to watch, and there's quite a lot of moments like that, and it's like, it's not as simplistic as saying, oh, are there any fart jokes in this? Like, people, that's a big thing that people are sort of really scared of. Are there any fart jokes? No, but there is a lot of really forced humor, which I just don't think works very well, and Sonic becomes really annoying in this, and you're kind of wanting him to shut up at points because it's just so bad. Now, that said, this isn't Ben Schwartz's fault. It's clearly a direction and a writing issue. It's just not good. Please drop all that. Please just kind of let these characters be. The evidence of this actually is with what Tails and Knuckles is like. Now, Tails is kind of, he's okay in this. Like, you know, the thing about the three main cast is that other than Sonic, who kind of does go through a bit of a development cycle, it's kind of like a circle. He kind of ends up back at the beginning where he was, but he does go on a bit of a range of the journey. Tails and Knuckles are kind of the same all the way through it, so but they do contribute positively to the plot. Now, Knuckles, Idris Elba, he's amazing in this. Like, he's really good. Like, at times Knuckles is really, you can tell he's really strong. He's got this like rage, this honor code warrior spirit within him, but then there's other times as well where he kind of just acts a little bit goofy, but it's not, you know, a forced thing. Like, he'll react incorrectly to something or react scared to something. Like, there's this running gag that he's actually secretly afraid of ghosts, and it's really funny. It does pay off in a really funny way between him and Shadow. It's a really, really great scene, but it's how Idris Elba plays it. It's so good. It almost makes me wish for a Knuckles TV show in which Knuckles would be starring in it. Knuckles in this is just way better than he was even in his own TV show. The range that Idris Elba puts into Knuckles is just fantastic. Like, there's so many different things I could talk about, but again, spoilery territory stuff. Knuckles is one of the surprise stars of this film. Really, really good. Tom and Maddie, really, really great performances. Oh, I should mention as well, something that I was kind of worried about was when I saw what was happening with Sonic 2. Like, in that film, you had Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Dr. Robotnik, Tom, Maddie, and then you had all these other cast members as well, like the extended family and everything that was going on. And it was just way too much. Like, there were some characters that were in there and it's like, what is this? What is going on? Why are we spending 10 minutes now on this wedding, which is just awful? When it eventually finished, I was genuinely worried because, oh man, now we're bringing in Shadow, now we're bringing in Maria, now we're bringing in Gerald. Like, this is a lot of characters you're going to have to try and cram into this movie now. The number of characters in this film is a lot lower than we're led to believe. Like, I can't remember the name of the actress or the character, but I want to say it's Maddie's sister, you know, the one who gets married in the previous film to the gun soldier. Well, she's in it with her husband, but it's not her. It's Tom and Maddie in disguise because we see it you see it in the trailer. They've got those like holographic things that completely disguise themselves. It is the same actor and actress that's playing the parts, but it's actually Tom and Maddie, and they're literally only in the film for about 3 minutes, if even that. They barely do anything, and it's fine. You know, it's perfectly fine. But I think that if they do go on with the fourth movie, they are going to have to make a few cuts to some of the prime cast members, because I do think it's going to be way too much now, because with this one I think they just got it right with the balance of screen time per character. The other big thing as well, which is a point I kind of want to bring up, a lot of people keep asking, oh, is there too much focus on the humans? Are the humans ruining this movie? Guys, are we ready to admit that the humans are kind of what makes these movies? And I know this might be a really weird thing to say, and I know some people are going to take that out of context, but like, look at this idiot, what's he saying? He thinks the humans are better. Here's the thing, when I was in the audience watching this film, the majority of the reactions and the majority of the responses came from the human characters. It came from watching Agent Stone, it came from watching Dr. Robotnik. There's a scene, especially right at the very end, in which Gerald says something to Robotnik, and the whole audience just reacted with this like, whoa, and like this gasp of what was said. And it sort of made me realize at that moment, oh my God, everybody's kind of resonating and cheering on Robotnik at this point. It was such an eye-opening moment. And it was the same thing with Agent Stone. There's a moment where he gets one of the biggest reactions of the film. Whereas you compare it to Sonic, it was almost completely quiet. Even for some of his more intense emotional scenes, nobody really reacted to him. And kind of the same with Tails, and whilst Knuckles does get some laughs, it's a similar thing. Like, it was the people, it was the human characters that people were really responding to and resonating with, which seems absolutely bonkers considering it's a Sonic movie. But yeah, I don't think the humans are the enemies in this movie series. I definitely think that they needed to tone it down from the second film with the wedding sequence, which went on for way too long and just wasn't very good. But how it's handled in this film is, I think, the perfect kind of balance. It was really, really well done. So obviously there's kind of a performance which I haven't yet spoken about, because I honestly don't know if I enjoyed it or not, and this might be a little bit controversial, but it's Keanu Reeves as Shadow the Hedgehog. Keanu is really difficult to kind of pin down as to whether I enjoyed his portrayal of Shadow or not. There were times where I was like, oh man, he's nailed that. Like when he's questioning Gerald about whether this is what Maria really would have wanted, he does a really good performance. You can really tell that he's struggling to, he's dealing with whether this is the right thing to do or not. And I really liked that. Reeves does a good job. But then when he first encounters Sonic and his friends, there's a couple of lines which are just like, really, was that the best take you had? It's really difficult. I'm really 50-50 on whether I think he's a good fit for Shadow or not. And I don't know. I don't want to say it was bad, but it was kind of like, I think he needs more to work with, maybe. I don't think it was bad, but he didn't quite nail it, like the same way that Idris Elba nailed Knuckles right from the word go. Again, I don't think it was a bad performance, but it wasn't amazing. I think there is some work to do there, but again, I don't know, maybe I'm in the minority on that one, but hey, we'll see. Okay, so just as a heads up, I'm now going to be talking about stuff which will include some spoilers for the film. I'm not going to be talking about the post-credit scene or the final fight. I will be talking about that later, but again, I'll give a big heads up before I do that. But yeah, we are going to be talking about some spoilery stuff going forward. So with that out of the way, let's get on with it. So a big thing about the movie is, does it make any major changes to Sonic Adventure 2's plot, and are these changes for the better or are they worse? Here's the thing, the movie, it's not really an adaptation of Sonic Adventure 2. It borrows heavily from it, but it kind of tells its own story and develops its own history and lore with what to do with that, and I kind of think it works for the film, and in some cases it clearly works better. A big change that they make is to Shadow's actual origin. In the games, obviously, Shadow is created by Gerald Robotnik with help from Black Doom, and he's done so because they hope he can be a foundation as a potential cure for Gerald's granddaughter. Even though that's not mentioned anywhere in the video game and it's all done through secondary media, but whatever. Now, in the movie, Maria, there's no sign or indication that I could see that she was ill or, needed medical treatment whatsoever. There was nothing like that in there. I think that whole angle was completely dropped. Now, Shadow isn't actually developed by gun scientists. He's literally an alien that crash lands on Earth, and they capture him and they start doing experiments on him, trying to figure out what he does. It's essentially what would have happened if they'd have captured Sonic. And how Shadow gets to Earth is in a fragment of the Black Comet. Yeah, the thing from Shadow the Hedgehog's video game, which kind of does open the door for a potential Black Doom, Black Arms incursion in a future film, shall we say. But it works. It really does work, because obviously they establish that Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are technically aliens, and the word alien is quite a taboo subject with those characters in this movie. They do make a joke about it, but no, Shadow, like them, is basically an alien, so he comes to Earth in Fragment of the Black Comet, and when he arrives, the gun scientists, they start doing these experiments on him, but what's interesting is they do this really awesome bit of world building. As they start to figure out Shadow and learn stuff from him, they start to develop technologies that can take advantage of him. And this is where the Space Colony Arc comes in. Now, the Space Colony Arc isn't actually up in space in this universe, it's actually under the River Thames in London, and it flies up. In the movie, it's not powered by the Chaos Emeralds, it's actually powered by Shadow. What was supposed to happen is Shadow's supposed to run around, and as he gets faster and faster, all the energy he generates goes into the Eclipse Cannon, and that's what gives it its power. And I really liked this. I liked this bit of world building. You could kind of see that the scientists were like, okay, we got this alien, he's really powerful, he can do all this cool stuff, how can we take advantage of that? Let's develop all these technologies that we could use. I liked it. It gave this sense of really cool world building. They were kind of trying to figure out Shadow and figure out how they could take advantage of it. And it does bring in these really cool new themes and ideas. Like in Sonic Adventure 2, there's a lot of really interesting themes in that, like the role of the government and the role of military and the state on people's lives if you look deep enough. Obviously, it's not the most, earth-shattering conclusions you can come to, because again, it's essentially kids kind of media, but it is there if you want to look for it. And I think there is some kind of very small political commentary going on here about how, we've got this incredible being of power, how can we weaponize that? And there's also a very, very minor thing as well that you can kind of see, but again, you've got to look really deep to see this, about the whole acquisition of nuclear weapons, which I think is a little small piece of commentary that's going on there, because Sonic actually says to the gun commander, wait, if Shadow is so powerful and dangerous, why do you guys have him? And the gun commander sort of shrugs and says, well, he was too dangerous to just let out, but he was also too valuable to destroy, so we've just kind of kept him locked up for 1,000 years, for 50 years. Let's hope we hoped he wouldn't get out. And it's like, yeah, gee, do you think there's some commentary there on how various world governments and armies have all these devastating weapons of mass destruction that they're just keeping secret? Well, do you want to let them out? No, why not? I did kind of like that. So if you do want to have the deeper level of analysis, there is a tiny little bit there to do so. But again, it's not, probably isn't the media to do that, but it is there. And I kind of appreciated that there was this little taste there. They weren't shying away too much from it. Oh yeah, so there was another bit as well, which I think the movie, it handles better than the games, but I don't think it was as clear as it could have been, especially to people who aren't major fans of this series. And honestly, even as a fan of this series, it's something that I've always been like, wait, when has this been, how long has that been a thing? Let's just look at Shadow a second. So, you know how, here is Shadow. Hello, Shadow. He's wearing his Christmas hat because it's Christmas and it's a bit cold. But anyway, so you know how Shadow has the rings on his wrists, the inhibitor rings? Yeah, these things limit Shadow's power. When he takes them off, he can go full power. Shadow, when was this explained in a video game, please? When was this actually explained in a game? Because I genuinely don't remember when this was told to us or explained. Like, I know in Sonic 06 he takes off the inhibitor rings and goes crazy at the end of his campaign, but has it ever outrightly been said? Or which game was it outrightly said? Because I legitimately cannot remember. But anyway, let's just pop Shadow back down there. Probably gonna fall over now. Okay, you go there. So yeah, in the movie, there is a scene where Shadow does take off his inhibitor rings so he can get maximum power to basically push the Space Colony Arc back into away from the Earth. Now, the way the movie handles this is there's a sequence right at the beginning where Sonic and Tails basically try to put handcuffs on Shadow. They're these specially made handcuffs in which he can't break, and I kind of like the visual metaphor of that Shadow is already wearing handcuffs which are limiting his power. But again, it is such a stretch of a reference. Unless you're very familiar with Sonic, you really wouldn't know that was a thing. And even though I am very familiar with Sonic, I have to say, other than when I've watched videos and people say, oh, Shadow's got these rings on his wrists which limit his power, he removes them to get full power, I genuinely can't remember where I've heard that in a video game. But it does become a plot point in the movie that Shadow does remove his inhibitor rings and he is able to go full power. Now, it's kind of fun in that it's kind of a visual link to that, the fact they literally want to put handcuffs on Shadow and arrest him and take him back into custody. But I really don't think general audiences will pick up on that link just because it's so thin. Like, it's never explained that, like, oh, we put these rings on Shadow that limits his power. He can only take him off under, you know, whatever. There's nothing like that in there. And I think it was a neat little stretch for fans of the game to sort of pick up on. There's this nice little visual link there with an idea that was set up at the start that they want to put these extra rings on his wrists to limit his power and ability and take him into custody, but he's already wearing them, which can, you know, his inhibitor rings do that already. But I don't think general audiences are really going to pick that up. But that was one of the major things, and even then it was kind of a minor point that I don't think general audiences would really pick up on. I think that point would just fly over their head. Another interesting thing that they do as well is Maddie brings this up, and this was actually something that I did see a few other people bring up, which was, wait, if Sonic and Knuckles now have the Master Emerald at the end of Sonic 2, why doesn't Sonic just solve every problem by going super and you know, saving the day? And this is actually brought up, and I kind of think part of the reason why this was in the movie is because they knew people like me was going to bring this up in videos like this, so they wanted to go, haha, we thought about this. Maddie actually brings up, well, why doesn't Sonic just go super and stop Shadow that way and stop Gerald and Eggman that way? That would be fine, that would be easy. And they kind of make the point that no, the Master Emerald is way too powerful, and if we do something wrong, it could very easily fall into their hands, and then we're in trouble. We can't really, you know, we're going to be in a worse position than we are at the moment. We can't risk that. It has to be a last resort thing that we fall back on. And this gets brought up later on, and it kind of goes into the whole thing I was talking about earlier about the theme of family. When Sonic fears that he's going to lose Tom, he decides, right, I'm using the Master Emerald, even though Tails and Knuckles are like, no, we're not there yet. I know you're upset. I know things seem bad, but we are not at that stage. And Sonic is so emotional and so angry, he doesn't care. He just wants to use it. And lo and behold, it kind of backfires on him. I really liked that. I kind of liked how it wasn't just a throwaway line. They actually did show the consequences of, no, you used that and now it's going to come back against you in some way. I did really, really like that and enjoy the fact that they had that as an, you know, it wasn't just a throwaway thing for people like me and people who complained on the internet about to say, shut up, we thought about this. So I mentioned at the very start of this video that there was about 15 to 20 minutes at the beginning of the movie which I didn't think was done very well. Like, it didn't really give chance for the scenes to breathe and play out, and I wish they kind of extended a little bit and, you know, let you get involved with it. Well, the problem with that is later on there are some sequences where you're kind of just sort of looking at your watch thinking, man, I wish they would get on with this, because unfortunately there are some sequences where the film really drags out and it is really not that great. Like, I've left it for the spoiler section because I don't think it has been properly revealed in full, but Dr. Robotnik and Gerald, they basically break into Gun headquarters because they need to get one of the activation keys for the Space Colony Arc. And during this, it's almost like a Mission Impossible style sequence, and it really does drag on quite a while, and there's a few jokes splattered in here and there as well, and some of them are funny, but there's this one sequence where they essentially do a dance number, and initially when it starts off, it's like, oh, okay, this is kind of funny. And then it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. And you sat there thinking, please stop this. Please stop this scene. This is not a good scene. Please make it stop. You've done this now. We could move on. We kind of get it. Literally, all they have to do is just walk down this corridor, but they decide to dance down it, and it's really bad. It just goes on for ages, and unfortunately there's a couple of scenes like that where they just didn't know where to stop because they thought, no, we gotta keep it going, it'll be funnier if we keep it going. And they'll be like, no, it really isn't. Please cut this down. Please cut this. It's really not that, it's not as funny as you think it is. And that was kind of a negative that I did have about, there was a couple of scenes like that where they just didn't know when to cut the joke, shall we say. And I think in a weird way this kind of resonates as well with what I said about Sonic, how Sonic can be kind of annoying at points, like how he doesn't know when to stop telling jokes, or they don't know when to make him stop doing the references. It just really, it becomes annoying. It's not as funny as they think it is, and that was a bit of a negative aspect of the movie that I thought it was just no dance numbers, please. This has gone on for a bit long now. Okay. This is a big heads up. I'm now going to talk about the final sequence in the movie, the final fight, and I'm also going to be talking about the post-credit sequence. These are major spoilers. If you don't really know too much about it, you might want to stop at this point, but I do think it's important I talk about this because it does affect the quality of the film. So let's get into it. So the trailers were very clever with kind of misrepresenting what the movie was going to be about. Now, I don't think it's a secret that Super Sonic and Super Shadow are in the movie, but what I do think was kept very well secret, they fight each other. Yeah, they actually fight each other in their super forms, and to my knowledge, we have never seen this before in any kind of game media. Maybe it was in one of the comics, but I certainly don't remember seeing this at all. And they actually fight each other in their super forms, and it's a really good, very raw, visceral fight. They really go at it. And I was like, wow, they actually did that. And it's a really great twist, because you honestly think, when you see the trailers and you see them in their super forms, you think they're going towards the Space Colony arc. Oh no, they're going away from it. They're literally going away from it in their super forms. And this is kind of tied up to what I said earlier about how, oh, they don't want to use the Master Emerald because they think there's a risk it will fall into the wrong hands. Well, this is what happens. Sonic turns into Super Sonic, but as he's fighting Shadow, Shadow gets one lucky hit on him, and Sonic essentially, the Emeralds, it's kind of like in Sonic 3 when Knuckles does his uppercut and knocks him out of his super form. Shadow does the same thing. Now Sonic quickly gets the Emeralds back together and transforms into Super Sonic, but by doing so, the energy goes into Shadow and he becomes Super Shadow, so now there's an even bigger dangerous threat. And Sonic is now back on this playing field of he's fighting someone who's now even stronger than he was before, and he can't win. And I really liked this idea. I really liked that they didn't just throw away that plot angle. I thought this was really good. And again, there's some really great visuals with this fight. It's done really well. And the thing is though, it does end kind of abruptly, but it is a really great little sequence. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and you can really get a really great sense of how strong and powerful these super forms can be. And I think this is one of the few times we've actually seen this properly in any kind of Sonic media. And again, it was done really, really well. Now, the thing is, I'm gonna just start talking about this scene because it just flows into so much stuff. They eventually their super energy kind of drains away, and they're both kind of sat on the moon, and Sonic realizes that he has let his emotions get the better of him, and he's going to basically do something that he doesn't want to do. So he doesn't deliver the finishing blow to Shadow, even though Shadow's begging him to finish it, so it puts him out of his misery and so he doesn't feel that pain of his loss anymore. And Sonic kind of realizes that no, that pain is what makes us who we are. It helps you just need guidance to help you get through it. You don't need to be destroyed. You need guidance and help. Let me help you. And I really liked that. I thought that was a very positive, very strong message. Obviously, it's not said word for word that way, but you can kind of tell that's where they're going with this. And I thought that was a really positive message, and I really liked they had that in there, especially in something like a kids film. It was really, really well done, and I have to give them good praise for it. Now that said, I do have some criticisms about this. The super forms eventually fade out, and this was kind of a point where there was some really weird stuff going on technical wise. They're in space at this point, and there's all these really, really close close-ups on their face, so you can see that they're quite well detailed. But what's really interesting is, in the background, it's literally a black background. There's no Earth, there's no stars in the sky, there's no colouring or anything. It's just pure black. And you might be thinking, they're in space, it's supposed to be black. Yes, that's right. In real life space, it is black and it is a void. But in movies, it's not. There's usually some colour, there's usually something going on. And you kind of felt like, oh, they're kind of doing this because they're trying to save money on the animation, the rendering budget. It was just really weird. It was like what you do when you want to sort of just try and get your shots done as quickly as possible. It was just bizarre how there were just these like really weird close-ups of their faces, and you could clearly see that they hadn't rendered the backgrounds, which I thought was a little bit strange. But that was something which I picked up on, but I think that was just because I'm kind of used to looking at edits and video and stuff. Like when you do stuff like this, you kind of notice things like that. Then we get to the final fight where Shadow decides to accept Sonic's help, and they become their super forms once again, and they decide to take out the Space Colony Ark. Now what happens here is Gerald enacts a bit of an ace up his sleeve. He presses a button, and all of a sudden these like hangers open up, and all these gun robots suddenly emerge. They're basically the mech robots from Sonic Adventure 2. They fly out and they start flying towards Sonic and Shadow, blasting lasers as they go. Now this is like the final fight in the movie, and it's a mess. It really is awful. It's so bad. Like, there's going to be some people who are like, what are you talking about? It's our server. The Sonic and Shadow are flying through space, and it's so cool. Oh, there's all this stuff going on. Oh, there's lasers. And, you know, like, people are going to like it because it's the visual of Sonic and Shadow flying through space. But my problem with it is, it's very similar to, if anybody watches Red Letter Media and they've seen their reviews of Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Discovery, you know that at the end of some of those seasons, there's like this thing, Rich Evans kind of says it best about how, oh, there's all these tiny ships that are flying around everywhere, firing lasers, and it's like this CGI mess, and you can't really pick out what's going on. There's just all this stuff happening on the screen, and things are flying in all over the place, and you just cannot figure out what's happening. It's just like this visual mess on your senses, and you just can't focus or tell what's happening. And unfortunately, the final climax to the movie was like that. There were so many robots flying in that you just couldn't focus on what was happening. It just looked like this massive CGI mess of special effects, and it really wasn't very good. Now, when you compare it to, say, like the climax of the second film, where it's just the one Death Egg robot and they're doing everything they can to take it out, it's a really tense, really dramatic battle. But here, there was just so much stuff going on that you just couldn't focus on anything. And there's one moment where Shadow does his Chaos Sphere attacks, and it was the one time where you could actually focus and see what was happening. And it was like, oh, okay, that's all we get. But then again, it just cuts to this massive, series of explosions. And it's just like, dude, this was a mess. You could have done something way better with this. Like, even if it was just like the laser was firing at them as they were going towards the Ark, that I think would be a lot more tense and clear as to what was happening. But this was just, no, it really didn't land for me. Like, I know some people are going to be, oh man, I loved seeing Sonic and Shadow flying through space. That was enough for me, yeah. And I'm like, no, what do you want from these movies? And I think this is kind of a really big point I want to make with these films in general, and why I'm not a big fan of the first two. What do you want from film adaptations of video games, especially Sonic ones? Do you just want to see recreations or visuals that are very similar to what you see in your video games? Or do you want something a little bit more, that is more tense, that is more dramatic, that actually makes you engaged with what you're seeing on the screen, not just this mess of special effects which bombards your senses, so you think, wow, this is an amazing action scene, but when you start to process what you're looking at, you kind of think, actually that wasn't really that great, it was just kind of forgettable. I'd rather watch something a lot more tense and, you know, dramatic and more carefully constructed. It really was a mess, unfortunately, the final battle. The actual the final, how they saved the Earth, I thought this was very well done, because obviously in the game they sort of do chaos control, and they move the space colony Ark out the way and they save the world. But here they essentially act as shields against the Ark's beam, as the other cast try and turn the laser away from the Earth until it runs out of power. And what I liked is you can actually see their super forms slowly fading away. I'm not going to spoil what happens here, actually. This is one spoiler I won't say, but again, I think the way they handled this was very, very clever and very well done, because obviously there isn't really ring energy to keep their super forms going in the movies, but I really liked this idea that the super energy kind of has a limit based on how much the character exerts themselves. So even though they are like Supersonic or Super Shadow, they can't do it infinitely. There is a limit to that power where it's like they've got to stop and recharge. And I really like this idea. I really liked that. I thought it was a much better approach to how you do a super form in Sonic, basically. I really, really enjoyed that. Oh, actually, what did the movie do worse from the game? I think that the gun actually does become an enemy of Sonic at one point, but it's handled really badly. It feels like there were some scenes missing. Like how it works is Gerald is secretly there's a scene where they're in the Chow Garden talking to the head of gun about what Shadow is and how dangerous he is, and it looks like the Eggman's machines attack them, and the general essentially, it's not really revealed if he is killed or not, it's heavily implied that he is, and he tells Sonic to keep the key code safe in Space Colony Ark, and that there's a second one in London and they've got to get it and keep it safe. Now, Gunn at this point knows that it wasn't Sonic and Co. who attacked the Chow Garden. They think it was Dr. Robotnik. But what's weird is they know that Sonic and Co. took the key card, and that's what prompts them to essentially hunt them down. They declare them as being their enemy, and they kind of go all out to try and stop them and take them down at this point. And you're like, hang on a minute, surely there should be some kind of... Why don't you just ask them, hey, what are you doing with that key code, by the way? And there is a sense that, oh, maybe Director Rockwell, who's played by Kristen Ritter, again, she is an okay performance in this. She doesn't really give him too much to do, but there's a sense, and a lot of people have speculated this as well, that she's actually Rouge the Bat wearing one of those holographic disguises. But no, there is no twist to her. She is literally just a senior figure in Gunn's organization. She doesn't really do anything. She just literally, her job is just to hunt down Sonic and his friends after she believes that they've stolen the key to the Space Colony Ark, and it's not handled so great. Like, you kind of wonder, wait, you get the sense that maybe she's going to reveal that there's like a twist to her character, but no, there really isn't, and it does feel like maybe there was a rewrite in the script, perhaps, that she was going to have this more predominant role and something was going to happen, but it kind of just drifts off and falls away. And again, I do think the game's approach is a little bit better. If you play the game, you can sort of see how Gunn did make their mistake. Obviously, it's not done brilliantly, but I do think the movie ironically does it a little bit not worse, but it's definitely a lot weaker of a reason as to why they're going after Sonic and his friends. There's another thing as well that I should kind of mention because it's kind of a spoiler, even though a lot of people have been asking about it. What's the movie score like? What's the music? Well, unfortunately, this is one of the things which is I kind of had to put as a bit of a negative. The music and the score was really forgettable. Like, I can't really remember much of the music that was used in the whole movie, like try as I might. There were some references to some of the game music, but it was done so sparingly and so little that there was one track, they actually played Eggman, you know, the Eggman's theme from I think it was Sonic Adventure 2, but it was so brief that I didn't actually pick up on it until somebody told me afterwards that it was in there, and I saw it in the film credits that it was actually in there. I didn't even see this, and the rest of the music choices just wasn't that memorable, or nor did it stand out too much. And this is kind of an unfortunate thing. This is kind of why I put this bit in spoilers. Live and Learn does play, but it might as well not be. So when Sonic and Shadow transform into their super variants, Live and Learn plays, but it's heavily edited, and it literally lasts for about 5 to 10 seconds, and then it stops. It just goes away. And then some other stuff happens, and then it cuts back to them, and there's like a little reprisal. It's like an orchestra version of it, and it does sound really, really cool, but it's really not handled so well. It feels like, you know, when you're at school and you get given an assignment, and you kind of have a really cool idea as to how you want to do it, and all of a sudden the teacher will say, okay, but you must include this. And it's something that you don't want to use, and it doesn't really, so you kind of just sort of put it in very briefly just to say, yeah, I did use it, even though it's not really, you know, part of your project. That's what Live and Learn was like. It honestly felt like Jeff Fowler had been told, you've got to include Live and Learn, you need to put this somewhere in your movie, and he was like, but I don't wanna! So he just briefly put it in as basic as he possibly could. Like, I know when some fans hear it, they're going to scream and be like, yeah, this is awesome, but it was one of those moments of, why did you bother? It's just not really used. It's in there for like 5 to 10 seconds, and then there's nothing. And then they bring it back again for a very minor moment, and then it just cuts back to the kind of generic, boring score that's so forgettable. And it's another thing, like how I think they have this weird thing about they're terrified of using the game music except for jokes and fun references, but this was one of those things that I think, like, I would have liked to have actually heard Live and Learn play out throughout the whole final fight sequence, but it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen the way I wanted, and I do think a few fans are going to be like, initially, oh my god, it's Live and Learn! It's like, wait, where did Live and Learn go? Come back! Come back! But yeah, it was nice that they included it, but I think it was one of those cases of, yeah, it felt like they only included it because they were made to include it instead of finding a good reason to put it in there. But the orchestra version, I really hope that gets released as its own standalone track, because it did sound really, really cool. I want to hear more of that. So yeah, it's nice that it was in there, but it was one of those things of, it felt like Jeff Fowler was being made to put it in there. All right, so I think we should get to the big one now, which is the post-credits scene. Now, at the time I'm recording this, unfortunately, yesterday there was a premiere. It was either in Spain or Australia, and somebody unfortunately did record and leaked the whole scene. So by the time I upload this, when the press embargo is lifted, probably everybody's going to know about this scene anyway, so I'm wasting my time right now. But anyway, let's talk about it, because I think it does have really good implications for the series going forward. Yes, there are 2 post-credit scenes. There's one about halfway into the credits, and then there's one right at the very end of the credits. Now, the big thing that happened, which made me laugh, and I was sort of like, what the hell's going on, is I was at the London premiere for this, and it was full of, obviously it was full of cast and crew, and there was also a big contingent of actual fans and just people that were sort of associated with the film and their families. So we were all sat down watching it, and the credits started to roll. And it was those animated credits that they've had in the previous 2 films. And people were starting to get up en masse and leaving. And we were all looking for, unfortunately nobody on my row was leaving, and I was just sort of yelled down, I'm not moving until the house lights come up. Because the house lights weren't up, it was still quite dark, but there was loads of people going, and even when the post-credit sequence started, people were still walking out. I was like, what are you doing? So anyway, the post-credit sequence essentially starts with, there's this big thing that's been running through the movies of Sonic's trying to have a race against his friends, and they eventually have the race and Sonic wins, but he realizes he's overshot the finish line and he's on the outskirts of New York. And whilst he's in the middle of these woods on his own, all of a sudden a metal Sonic appears and takes aim at him and fires. And this was something which brought a huge reaction. Like, there was this huge gasp and, oh my god, it's a metal Sonic. But then there was like people asking, wait, who built it? Where's it come from? What's going on here? And then all of a sudden, loads of metal Sonics appear and take aim at Sonic. And Sonic tries to fight off one of them, but he's not very successful. It just kind of shrugs off all his attacks, and all of a sudden all of them appear, and I sort of screamed out, it's the Brotherhood of Metallics from Fleetway Comics, because it was like, oh my god, this is like an awesome moment. And a few other people, when they realized that there was multiples of them, sort of screamed out. And when you consider that this was at the London premiere, so we were all on our best behaviour, and we were a British audience, and the thing about UK audiences, we very rarely shout out stuff during a performance. Like, it just doesn't happen, it never happens. But this was the moment where people were audibly reacting to what was happening on screen. It was such an amazing moment. But the thing that blew the house down was all of a sudden this thing comes spinning in and destroys all Metal Sonics, and then all of a sudden this cloaked figure jumps into the air, catches the hammer and pulls the cloak off, and it's Amy Rose. And the whole audience just erupted. Like, everybody that knew who it was just screamed the house down. It was fantastic. A few things with this. I think that going forward, because of this, because now they've clearly set a precedent for the next movie. We've got Metal Sonics coming in, and we've also got Amy Rose. Given how the third movie was with how it treated the characters, I would not be surprised if maybe we saw Tails and Knuckles sort of taking a bit of a sidestep, because otherwise we're going to have a massive cast in the next movie, especially if we're now bringing Amy into it. And again, I kind of want to talk about Amy's depiction, as brief as it was. I kind of liked it. I liked the fact they started her off as being this kind of a strong character, but I do think we might see a bit of a retcon to this post-credit scene, because you had Sonic who was doing all these attacks on... Well, actually, I'm not sure, because there's kind of a point I wanted to bring up, actually. You have Sonic attacking these Metal Sonics, and it just kind of shrugs off, but Amy comes in and instantly destroys them all, and it sort of works and it doesn't. Now, the reason why I don't think it does work is because it's essentially kind of a power creep. You've established that Amy can very easily destroy a Metal Sonic, which just feels a bit wrong. But in the movie universe, Sonic hasn't really been taught to fight. Yeah, he can run really fast and he can perform a spin dash, but he doesn't really know how to do this stuff yet. Like in the first movie, there's that famous scene where he does a spin attack against one of Eggman's robots and blows it up, and he literally says, I've no idea how I did that. And then in the second film, it's kind of the same thing. He's a little bit more skilled and competent, but he doesn't really know what to do. He's still kind of learning and finding his feet. And in the third film, it's very similar. There's actually there's a theme and an idea which is kind of dropped, and it's the idea that Sonic, Tails and Knuckles are trying to work together as a team, but it doesn't really go anywhere, and I think that's a little bit of a shame. But Sonic's actual combat ability isn't that great. He's still trying to learn stuff. He's still not competent with his own moveset, and it's very, you know, he can throw punches and he can run really, really fast, but he's not really performing spin dashes as confidently as he could. He's able to perform one when his friends are in danger, but you know, it's not the full moveset we've come to expect from that character. So I kind of like this idea that maybe in the fourth movie we'll sort of see Sonic becoming more competent with his abilities, so he can just destroy robots as much easier than he currently does. And the other big thing as well, Amy doesn't speak in the post-credit sequence, so we don't know who her voice actress is going to be, whether it's going to be her game counterpart or if they're going to cast somebody to play her, which I thought was interesting. I know some absolute freaks and weirdos are going to complain about the fact that Amy was kicking ass, but yeah, fuck those people, I don't care. Yeah, I thought it was really, really well done the way they introduced her. It was really cool and it was really epic, and it got one of the loudest pops of the whole thing. Yeah, really, really well done. And I also liked how they handled Metal Sonic as well. That he never said a word. He doesn't say anything. He looks so terrifying. He looks so menacing. I just wasn't sure if it was a bit too much of a power creep, the fact that Amy was able to take them all out so easily. But again, this might get retconned in a future movie, but I do think this is probably going to set a precedent going forward that maybe, just maybe, we'll see a bit of a smaller cast, because this one was already quite large and I think they just about got the balance right. But now if they're going to bring in Metal Sonic and Amy, that's a lot. So yeah, I really hope that they won't go too overboard and they will be very, very careful with it like they was with this movie. Okay guys, so thank you very much for sticking with me to the end if you are here. Yeah, I know this was kind of a rambly video review, but honestly I think this was the best way to do it, because whilst after I immediately left the cinema, I tweeted this in which I said that was awesome. When you go to see a movie, I think usually like a day or two later, when you've had time to process what it is you saw and what's resonated with you, you can get a much more accurate recollection of how you think that the movie was, basically what you took away from it. And honestly, I had a fun, enjoyable time watching this film. I think this was a good movie. Obviously, it's no masterpiece, and I doubt very much it's going to be like a timeless classic, but it was good, and it was fun, and it was very enjoyable. I think you'll have a good time watching this film. Now, that said, I do think that we as a Sonic fan base need to start having a bit of a conversation about what exactly do we want from these movies going forward, because the second movie definitely fell into this trap, and I think the first movie sort of does as well, and this one kind of avoided it for the most part. There is this sense from the fans that all we really want is like direct adaptations of video games, or all we want to see is like we just want to see like get huge visualizations of famous scenes from the game, maybe twisted a little bit, which is why I think we've got this final section in the third movie, which I just think is kind of a visual mess, because there's just so much going on. It's like, is that really good enough? Like, are we just okay with that? Like, just screaming constantly at like stuff which we recognize from video games, which again, yeah, it's very iconic imagery and it's very strong imagery, but I really do think that the strength from these movies kind of comes from the stuff which a lot of people say, no, we shouldn't have that. That's bad. Like, why are we spending so much time looking at these people? And yet, clearly, as I've said, like, and sort of experienced from the reactions of the people in the auditorium with me, the human relationships, like between Dr. Robotnik and Gerald, and certainly Agent Stone, and even Tom and Sonic, that was the strongest parts of this film for me. And I think that we are running a bit of a risk here of asking for the wrong stuff. Yeah, it's really cool to see all this visual stuff, and yay, a movie which is just the Sonic characters would be nice, but I really think that a big strength of these films does come from the stuff that a lot of people are saying, no, we don't want this, we don't want this. No, guys, I really do think that stuff is strong, and it's good that it's in this film, and I think it was good that it was in the second movie and the first one as well. But yeah, the second movie did overdo it with a wedding scene, let's just say. But anyway, I hope that kind of makes it clear. Basically, what do we want from these going forward? Let me know in the comments, like, what do you want from this? Are you just okay with seeing visual recreations of scenes from the games that you like, or do you kind of feel like more I do, where we kind of need something a little bit more here? Because I think the fourth movie could potentially be, we're at a bit of a crossroads with where this series could go potentially, and I kind of want it more to go down the direction of, look, even if they're not just recreating famous shots and sequences from the games, I'm kind of okay with that, as long as we get a really well-told story that's shot really well, that isn't just relying on jokes every few seconds and references. Like, I want a Sonic that's a little bit more calmer and reserved, shall we say, and scenes that can just play out and breathe instead of just having to quickly cut to other stuff all the time, because there is some genuinely great stuff in this film, but some really nasty habits from the first two films are also in this one, so just be aware of that when you go see it. But otherwise, guys, I think you will really enjoy this movie if you go and see it. And with that, thank you so much for watching. As I said, I'm currently working on a big behind-the-scenes mini documentary about what it was actually like on the premiere evening, so please check that one out. And again, I'm working on the massive Sonic Frontiers video, which, I don't know when that's going to be out. It's still a big project. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time. Goodbye.